Good morning everybody, this is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. I want to do another video in my series on the King James Bible, and we're going to be referencing this book, but we've got another number of other books to look at eventually as well. And I'm going to be picking out various aspects of this book, so it's always in front of me, hoping I'm getting the dates and the details correct. So the question of number 6 is a Puritan king ? The accession of King James. Now, when Elizabeth I died in 1603, she left a nation that had been propelled to global greatness by the events of her long reign. Now, England's rise to international power, which dates from the second half of the 16th century, is widely attributed to the national stability developed under the long reign of Elizabeth I. When she came to the throne in the aftermath of the disastrous reign of Mary Tudor, which had been widespread persecution of the Protestants in England. Over 300 people were put to the stake under her reign, and the assassination of the statesman William of Orange by the Roman Catholics led many to fear that Elizabeth would suffer the same fate. In 1570, the Pope had specifically released Elizabeth's subjects from any allegiance to her, in effect offering a license to anyone to dispose of her and place her and replace her with someone more sympathetic to Rome. Now, this was a deliberate act of treachery of the Pope in Rome. The obvious replacement was going to be Mary, Queen of Scots, who was the focus of assassination plots against Elizabeth, including the Babington plot of 1586. At Parliament's insistence, Elizabeth ordered Mary's execution in February 1587. Now, the most important event to secure England's Protestant identity was the decision of Philip II of Spain to defeat the English Protestant country by war. It was a direct assault upon England by the Roman Catholic Church. In effect, it was to restore the situation as it was under Mary Tudor, with whom Philip had briefly been married. A huge armada, the Spanish word, simply means a fleet of 130 ships, was assembled in Portugal and sailed for England in the final days of May 1588. The original intention was to line up the army of the Duke of Parma at Calais, to link up with the army at Calais, and then to proceed across the Channel to invade southern England. The plan went catastrophically wrong. The Armada was intercepted long before Calais, and they were harassed by English warships until it finally reached Calais. The Duke of Parma failed to show up with his army, and on July the 29th, the English fire ships caused havoc amongst the Spanish warships that were anchored. They eventually put to sea and were engaged in the Battle of Gravelines, and the following day they were routed. The Spanish decided to abandon any attempt to invade England and return home by a circular route going right round the coast of Scotland and Ireland. However, severe weather and English attacks took their toll, and the survivors limped home totally defeated and totally demoralized. The outcome was confirming England's credentials as a Protestant nation. It was marking a significant shift of power in Western Europe. Up to this point, Spain had been widely considered as the dominant naval and military power, and the English victory was thus a landmark in English self-confidence. And the English victory brought about what could be called the golden age of Queen Elizabeth. She was referred to as Good Queen Bess and the Virgin Queen and Gloriana, which all pointed to her significant role as head of the powerful emerging nation. At this particular time there was a rise of a very significant body of English literature. We had Ben Jonson, we had Christopher Marlowe, Edmund Spenser, William Shakespeare, and Sir Philip Sidney, and they gave the English language some of its most important works of literature. Now, the fault lines and the tensions between late Elizabethan and Protestantism. Now, we're going to talk about that. Although herself wishing religious peace, Elizabeth rapidly found herself caught up in the religious controversies of the age. Many of the English Protestants who had sought exile in the cities of Europe, including Geneva, returned on learning of Mary's death. Now, Elizabeth determined to settle the religious question as quickly as possible, and she was stuck between her Protestant and Catholic subjects. The Elizabethan period was noted for growing religious tensions, and she brought about what was called the Elizabethan settlement of religion. Now, her concern was primarily establishing religious peace. However, the way she brought about it didn't bring peace to either side. It just brought a sort of stalemate. And the issues that she regarded as little importance were very often the big issues that faced the common people. Now, the Puritans were emerging as a radical Protestant movement, dissatisfied with the compromises of Elizabeth that she had forced upon the national church. The Puritan movement saw issues such as the use of the prayer book, the clerical dress, the use of the ring of the priest, and one of the men that came back from exile in Geneva was a man called Thomas Sampson. He became Dean of Christ Church, Oxford, and Elizabeth had laid down the rule that clergy must wear vestments. But the returning exiles from Geneva saw these vestments as a symbol of Roman Catholicism still hanging on. The Puritans found the use of the prayer book absolutely objectionable. They didn't believe that many of the things that were being practiced were correct according to Scripture, such as kneeling to receive the bread at communion, making the sign of the cross at baptism. And they had lots of other issues about who was the supreme leader of the church. And in this case, of course, it was a king or a queen. Now, Puritanism was clearly becoming an increasingly powerful and sophisticated presence in England. There were two different styles of Anglicanism, of Protestantism. There was Anglicanism, which was the Church of England, and there was Puritanism. Now, in this particular regard, we note people like John Bunyan, who was a Puritan. This is the sort of the way people were. Anglicanism stressed the close link between the church and the monarch. That's what they stressed. And they valued the role of the king or the queen as the supreme governor of the Church of England. It informed the importance of the prayer book, and it informed the dominance of the bishops. Okay. John Wycliffe, the Archbishop of Canterbury at that time, stated that the principle of royal supremacy and obedience to authority, bishops, princes, and magistrates, that was his thing, and this was the thing that they believed would guarantee the English national church. The Puritans thought otherwise. They longed for a radical overhaul of the English church, and they looked to Geneva rather than to Canterbury for inspiration. They had a number of issues. They had an issue with the Roman Catholic influence of the prayer book. They also had already adopted Calvinistic theology, and they were developing a preaching ministry. This was something that was a glory to England at that time. And the Geneva Bible had come to be a potent symbol of reform. Now, with the succession of Elizabeth I to James I, the stability and prosperity of England seemed to many to be a direct result of the wise rule of Elizabeth. It was no accident that the date of her accession was celebrated as a national holiday in England for 200 years. Elizabeth had never married and she had died childless. Now, the person that would succeed her would be James VI of Scotland. James was the obvious choice to succeed Elizabeth. And so we come right the way down to the complications as a result of Henry VIII's will. Now, there were complications. Henry's will, which established the rules for his successors, had laid down that no alien could succeed to the throne of England. However, James was born in Scotland. Okay, was that an alien country? Well, it was considered an alien country, yes. In the end, James did succeed to the English throne because he was the only viable candidate. He was male, he was Protestant, and he possessed rank and experience of government. And he had a strong hereditary claim to the throne. The only question really is, what sort of king would he be? Well, the thing that happened with James VI is that he became quite a critic of Puritanism. He had reigned in Scotland, and in Scotland the Geneva Bible had a great influence on the people. So he knew all about it, and he disliked Presbyterianism, believing passionately that his royal authority was dependent upon bishops. His slogan was, "No bishops, no king," and therefore having bishops was an absolutely crucial part of his idea. But the Scottish Church, the Kirk, had adopted the Presbyterian system of church government, which meant that they had elders. It was an elder-led church government developed by Calvin in Geneva, and the reformers such as John Knox and Andrew Melville. So the Presbyterian system had no place for bishops, no place at all, no need for bishops. And that was a major change in relation to the English church. And the city of Geneva had declared itself to be a republic, overthrowing its former rulers. He preferred an episcopal system, not least because of its more positive associations with the monarchy. So the episcopal system was something that he preferred because of what he thought he would get out of it. He thought he would keep his throne as a result. He much preferred the Anglican system of church government, and seeing the institution of episcopacy as a safeguard to his own throne. James made the most of the window of opportunity to neutralize the Puritan threat while pretending to honour its concerned. And so that's why he was absolutely dead against the Geneva Bible. Now, the reason for his dislike of the Geneva Bible wasn't difficult to understand. He hated not the Bible, not the translation of the Bible. He hated the marginal notes. In the marginal notes, the people of Geneva, the men of Geneva, were very free in criticism of monarchy. And that's why he hated it. And they offered political comments in the text, and James detested what he found in those notes. He believed in the divine right of kings. He believed that kings should be respected and honoured. Now in Geneva they didn't have that idea, and so therefore he was going to be the sworn enemy. And there's a number of examples in this book about all the controversies that they had from the scriptures, okay, and the comments that they put in the margins to explain. So for example, there's a quotation from Daniel 6 where the comment in the margin talks about the tyrants, and the tyrants is referring to kings. And the King James Version never uses the word tyrant, which is a matter for understanding where James stood. And then we have lots of examples. We have an example here in the relation of Moses in Exodus, and we have another one in Second Chronicles. But these are just examples of how different people viewed politics in different ways. So we come all the way down that the Geneva Notes argued that the word anointed was to be understood to refer to God's people as a whole, not to refer to the king himself. So James now, as a result of all of this, had a personal agenda. It was to rid England of what he regarded as the terrible influence of the Geneva Bible and its detestable marginal notes, as he put it. It was, in his view, the worst of all English translations. But of course, when he's talking about he's not talking about the Bible, he's talking about the notes attached to the Bible. Yet when James I came to the throne of England in 1603, the position of the Geneva Bible seemed absolutely secure. It had outsold and outperformed all its rivals. It was the version of the Bible that had been used by Shakespeare in his dramas. How could it conceivably be toppled from its place of eminence? And the growing sales and the influence of this Bible seemed to be beyond James' control. The future of both the English monarchy and the church could depend upon eliminating the most turbulent of Bible translations. But what could be done to topple it from its place of honor? And that's going to be the subject of our next video. So we look forward to catching up with you then, and we wish you have a wonderful time. Oh, by the way, please like and please subscribe. That'll be very helpful to us. God bless you all. Bye for now.